So this morning I had a terrible makeup experience wherein I completely messed up my eyeshadow and eyeliner and I had to wash my face and start over. So that was fun. Yeah. Hello everyone, it is Sam and I hope you guys are having a great day today. Today I'm here to talk about hilarious fantasy books. That's right, today I am here to share some of my favorite fantasy books that contain a lot of humor, because who doesn't like to laugh? I know I do. So I feel like this is something that's like never talked about when people talk about fantasy. People usually think about the young hero going off to save the world, or like dragons and sorcerers and all of that stuff, which is great because that's what makes fantasy fantasy. But there is one thing that people never talk about, and that is funny fantasy books. So I have 6 of my favorite fantasy stories that are full of a lot of humor, and I thought that I would share them with you guys. First one that I have to talk about is Lies of Locke, Lamora by Scott Lynch, or any of the 3 books that are currently out in the Gentleman Bastards series. All 3 of them are full of a lot of humor because Locke and Jean are very sarcastic characters, particularly Locke. So even though there's a lot of, heart-wrenching and action-packed moments, there's also a lot of humor in these stories as well, which I really, really appreciate. I love humor in my stories, and the humor in these books is spot on. It's definitely my kind of humor, which I think is why I enjoy it so much. The next fantasy book that I have to recommend to you guys is another one that nobody talks about in general, but I really enjoyed it and I still need to finish the series, and that is The Palace Job. This story by Patrick Weeks features another heist story similar to The Lies of Locke, Lamora, and interestingly enough, also features a main character of Locke, though it is spelled differently, and in this case, it is a female. And Locke teams up with a shape-shifting unicorn, a talking warhammer, a boy with seemingly no skills, a cynical illusionist, and a very repentant death priestess to break into the fortress of Heaven's Spire and basically steal his family's money and fortune. So this story was full of a lot of humor. It almost reminded me a little bit of an adult Percy Jackson story. Just all of the characters were very different from each other, and there was so much sarcasm and humor. It's very tongue-in-cheek, and it had some dark humor, and I just loved it. I found myself really enjoying the story. It was actually a pretty quick read, and it's another one that I cannot wait to continue on with the series. I'm far overdue to get the last 2 books, and I cannot wait. The next book that I have to share with you guys is actually one that I recently finished and is part of the BookTube SFF Awards, and that is Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This story is so great. It follows a band of mercenaries who get back together after about 20-ish years, so they're about in their 40s or 50s in this story, and it's just so fun. And they're getting back together to save their band leader's daughter, who is stuck in a city under siege by all of these creatures from the wild. And it was a lot of fun, this story. It kind of reminded me of a cross between Sebastian De Castile's Greatcoat series and Miles Cameron's Trader Sun cycle, and I really found myself enjoying it. It was just full of so much humor. I love these characters. There's a lot of like heart-wrenching moments. It didn't overdo the humor. The humor was a little bit subtle in certain cases, and it was kind of making fun of itself almost, which I really appreciated, and I just had a lot of fun reading this one. I cannot wait to have more stories by this author, because this was his first book, I believe, because he was a nominee in the BookTube SFF Award debut category, and I'm definitely impressed with his writing. Plus, I see Sebastian De Castile also shouted out this book, so clearly he also enjoyed the humor, because his books are full of humor. Which leads me to my next recommendation, which is Sebastian De Castile himself, in particular his Greatcoats series. I love this series. It follows the 3 main characters of Falcio, Brasti, and Kest, and they are 3 of the remaining Greatcoats by the king, who are basically the people that went throughout the land dispensing the king's justice. All of the Greatcoats were scattered. These 3 rather, were kind of the ringleaders of the group, and they're basically trying to carry out the king's last wishes while trying to figure out what exactly that means. And the story is so good. There is so many like intense moments and some very, very sad moments, but he really breaks it up with a lot of humor, because Falcio, Brasti, and Kest are very sarcastic, and Brasti in particular is like a complete and utter smartass, and I just love this series so much. It was like the perfect combination of humor and action and heart-wrenching moments that just made it a complete masterpiece in my eyes. I've gushed about this series before, and I will forever continue to do so because it is that good. The next one I have here is actually a childhood favorite, and that is The Princess Bride by William Goldman. My sister gave this to me for my birthday when I was about 11 years old. Of course, I had already seen the movie at that point and loved it. The book is so good. It is one of those cases where I actually like the movie and the book just as much, and I think that's partly due to the fact that William Goldman wrote both, so I think that definitely kind of helped it a little bit. But the story is so funny. Like, you think the movie is funny? Trust me, this one is full of a lot more humor, and I love it so much. It's like the perfect little romantic fairy tale, but it doesn't take itself seriously. seriously, and I really appreciated that about this story. And William Goldman is just really, really good at humor, and everything about it is just sweet and funny and full of a lot of swashbuckling moments. And the last series I have to recommend to you guys for humorous fantasy is Rhyria Revelations by Michael J. Sullivan. This series follows Royce and Hadrian, who are two mercenaries that work together in thieves to basically take on any job that they get from the nobility, and they can do any job. Like, they have a really big reputation. But these two characters are so great because not only do they have a bond that is a very brotherly bond, but they don't take themselves seriously, and they're not afraid to kind of put each other in their place. And you have Royce, who's extremely sarcastic, and Hadrian, who's a little bit more serious, and so the humor just kind of plays into the story really, really well. And again, as with any fantasy book, there's a lot of epic moments, there's a lot of battles, there's a lot of twists and turns, but mixed in between that plot is a lot of humor. And Michael J. Sullivan is really, really, really good at doing humor, especially subtle humor, which this book is rife with, and I absolutely adored it. And anybody I know who has read this series has enjoyed it. It's definitely a fun one and definitely a fast read. Though it's a little bit chunky, it's definitely a very, very fun series, and with the action-packed moments and the humor, it definitely makes it go by quickly. Alright guys, that is my recommendation for humorous fantasy stories. If you know of a fantasy story that you think would fit this bill, a fantasy book that is full of a lot of humor, please let me know, because that is one of my favorite types of fantasy book to read, is one that has a lot of humor, because I like to laugh. Who doesn't? Alright guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys have a great day. Until next time, happy reading. Bye!